They tell you the surveillance state began in Moscow in 1917, that Lenin invented it, that the KGB built the entire thing from scratch. But that's too small of a story, because the real power wasn't ideology, it was infrastructure. A system so effective that every secret police apparatus that came afterward, the Cheka, the NKVD, the KGB, the Stasi, mostly just copied the blueprint and changed the letterhead. They read every letter. They opened every telegram. They planted agents inside revolutionary movements, not just to observe them, but to guide them. Sometimes they handed revolutionaries the bombs. Sometimes they funded the printing presses. And eventually, they handed them the news. They weren't just watching the game. They were dealing the cards, making the deck, and owning the casino all at the same time. And by the end of this episode, you'll see the mechanics underneath the myth, because almost every modern surveillance state traces back to the same operating system, the Okhrana. Welcome back to Hidden Forces in History. I'm your host, Jeremy Ryan Slate, CEO of Command Your Brand. Check us out at commandyourbrand.com. And now, our story. March 1881. A bomb explodes on a street in St. Petersburg. Tsar Alexander II, the reformer Tsar, the man who freed the serfs and tried to modernize the Russian Empire, dies in the snow with his body torn apart so badly that witnesses could barely recognize him. His son, Alexander III, looks at what's left of his father and comes to a conclusion. Reform didn't save him. Concessions didn't save him. So if the throne is going to survive, it needs to know who's planning to destroy it before the attack ever happens. Within months, new secret police stations appear in Moscow and Warsaw, all answering to a single address. Fontanka, 16, a building on a canal in St. Petersburg that looked ordinary from the outside, but inside it became one of the most feared places in the Russian Empire. Officially, it was called the Department for Protection of Public Safety and Order. Everyone else called it the Okhrana, but this is the part people usually miss. The Okhrana didn't begin as some giant surveillance machine. It began as a reaction, a frightened son trying to solve the problem his father couldn't. How do you stop enemies you can't actually see? Because revolutionaries didn't march around in uniforms. They met in basements. They printed pamphlets in hidden rooms. They moved through cities almost invisibly. And the old method, raid a building, arrest everyone, sort it out later, was too slow. By the time police kicked in the door, the conspiracy had already moved somewhere else. So Fontanka 16 starts building something different. Not punishment after the act, prevention before the act. They wanted to know what the enemy was planning before the enemy fully understood the plan themselves. And to do that, they needed a system, a machine built from the ground up. Before the internet, before wiretaps, before satellites, there was mail. Every letter in the Russian Empire passed through a centralized postal system. Every telegram, every package, every private confession sealed inside an envelope and sent across thousands of miles. The Okhrana realized almost immediately that if you controlled the mail, you controlled visibility into society itself. They called the process Perlustration. It sounds clinical, almost bureaucratic, but the scale of it was enormous. The special section inside Fontanka 16 began systematically recruiting postal employees, clerks, inspectors, sorters. Every point in the chain where a letter could quietly disappear for a few minutes without raising suspicion. When certain correspondence arrived at sorting centers, an Okhrana contact flagged it and passed it upward. Then, on the 5th floor of the headquarters at Fontanka 16, teams worked in silence, opening envelopes with steam, reading the contents, copying anything useful, resealing the letters, and sending them back into circulation. The sender never knew. The recipient never knew. The mail still arrived on time. That's what made the system so effective. The point wasn't disruption. The point was invisibility. And over time, the Okhrana began building dossiers the way banks build financial files, names, associates, addresses, political leanings, weaknesses, networks, all extracted from private correspondence. Legally, the entire operation sat on shaky ground. Ministers inside the government understood that. They approved it anyway because the law wasn't really the priority anymore. The system was. And that's where the changes from simple surveillance into something much larger happens. The Okhrana didn't just gather information, they organized it, cross-referenced it, turned private communication into actionable intelligence. When the Cheka took power in 1917, they found these files still sitting inside Fontanka 16. They didn't destroy them, they expanded them. Later, the KGB would incept billions of pieces of mail using almost the exact same architecture. Same machine, bigger engine. Reading mail told you what people were thinking, but it didn't tell you what they were going to do next. And more importantly, it didn't let you control what they did. In 1882, a gendarme officer named Grigory Sadukhin solves that problem. Sadukhin runs the special section in St. Petersburg, and he develops one of the most important tools in the history of the surveillance state, the agent provocateur. Not a spy in the traditional sense. More precisely, something far more dangerous. Because a spy watches, provocateur participates. Sadukhin starts embedding agents directly inside revolutionary organizations, not merely to observe them, but to shape their actions from within. One of the key figures is a revolutionary turned informant named Sergei Degaev. And through Degaev, Sadukhin effectively begins running parts of the People's Will movement from inside the movement itself. The Okhrana funds illegal printing presses. Revolutionary pamphlets are printed using police money. Distribution routes are mapped. Readers are cataloged. The revolutionaries think they're spreading dissent. In reality, they're building the Okhrana's database for them. And this becomes the breakthrough. The provocateur suggests the meeting, proposes the action, supplies the materials, pushes the movement toward escalation. Then, when arrests come, the provocateur disappears, while everyone else goes to prison. The psychological effect is almost as important as the operational one. Because once revolutionaries realize infiltrators may exist, everywhere, paranoia starts to work for the state. The Okhrana officially denied using provocateurs, but the denial was part of the strategy. If nobody can prove infiltration exists, suspicion spreads through every organization automatically. Eventually, Degaev realizes he's disposable. In 1883, he murders Sadukhin in his apartment. The man who helped invent the provocateur system is killed by the very machinery he built. The Okhrana studies the failure, notes the risk, and continues anyway. The method was too useful to abandon. By 1900, the revolutionary problem is changing. These are no longer just isolated intellectual cells operating in secret apartments. Workers are organizing now. Factories are becoming political recruiting grounds. And the Okhrana realizes its existing model can't scale fast enough against a mass movement. That's when a bureau chief named Sergei Zubatov proposes something radical. Instead of destroying worker organizations, the state would create them. Police-run unions. Workers would receive a legal outlet for grievances, while the Okhrana received something even more valuable, a complete map of politically dissatisfied labor workers. They called it Zubatov's Sechina, police socialism. In 1901, Zubatov launches the Moscow Mechanical Production Workers Mutual Aid Society. It looks like a union, functions like a union, negotiates conditions like a union, but every member is cataloged, every meeting is monitored, every organizer compromised from the beginning. And for a while, it works. Revolutionary recruitment declines. Worker frustration gets redirected into controlled channels. The system stabilizes itself. Then actually, this is where the contradiction inside the entire model starts to appear. Because once you create an organization that channels public anger, eventually that anger develops momentum of its own. In Odessa during 1903, strikes spiral beyond police control. Entire regions lock down. The Okhrana suddenly faces a choice: crush the strikes and expose the unions as police fronts, or allow the unrest to spread. They crush it. And once that happens, the illusion collapses. Zubitov is removed. The organization survives long enough to become something the state never intended. Real movements. One of the surviving organizations is led by a priest named Father Gregory Gapon. His assembly of working men grows into a massive workers' organization with thousands of members. Originally police-backed, then abandoned. In January 1905, Gapon organizes a peaceful march to the Winter Palace. Workers bring petitions asking for shorter hours, better wages, basic protections. They carry icons, sing hymns, bring their families and children. And the Okhrana knows the entire thing is happening. They help create the structure, organizing the march in the first place. Then January 22nd arrives. The crowd reaches the Winter Palace. The Imperial Guard opens fire. Hundreds die in the snow. Exact numbers vary depending on the source. But the scale of the massacre fundamentally changes Russia. Bloody Sunday ignites the revolution of 1905 and destroys the image of the Tsar as a benevolent protector almost overnight. And the critical thing here is the Okhrana contributes to the disaster, not because it planned the massacre, but because it built a political mechanism that it ultimately couldn't control. A machine designed to prevent revolution helps produce the conditions for revolution instead. While the domestic Okhrana is infiltrating organizations and intercepting mail, and other branches operating across Europe, the Foreign Agency, the Zagraniczna Agentura. Its headquarters are in Paris, under a man named Peter Rychavsky. Rychavsky treats Russian immigrant communities almost like a strategic chessboard. Revolutionaries flee to Paris, Geneva, London, Berlin, believing distance gives them safety. It doesn't. The Foreign Agency infiltrates newspapers, compromises political groups, manipulates rival factions, plants forged documents, manufactures internal distrust. And when organizations become too dangerous, Rychavsky often doesn't try to arrest them. On foreign soil, that's difficult. Instead, he destroys credibility. That's the shift. Not merely surveillance anymore, narrative management. Then comes one of the darkest examples of all. Multiple historians, including Russian historian Mikhail Lepekin, trace the fabrication of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion to Okhrana-link operatives working under Rychavsky's system in Paris. The protocols claim to reveal a secret Jewish conspiracy for global domination. It was a forgery, but it served a political purpose. Redirect anger away from the Tsarist state and towards an invented enemy. The document spreads across Europe, then globally. Hitler later cites it. It fuels pogroms and eventually helps justify genocide. A fabricated document created for political management becomes one of the most destructive propaganda texts in modern history. That goes beyond surveillance. That's reality engineering. The Provocateur system eventually produces two of the most extraordinary cases in the history of political infiltration. Yevno Azef and Roman Malinovsky. Azef becomes head of the Russian Socialist Revolutionary Fighting Organization, one of the most active assassination networks in Russia. He is also an Okhrana informant, which means the man directing revolutionary assassinations is simultaneously reporting to the secret police. In 1904, Azef organizes the assassination of Interior Minister Vladislav von Pleva. The Okhrana knows the attack is coming because Azef told them. They allow it to happen that way. That's the moment where the entire system reveals its deeper logic. The provocateur isn't just infiltrating the revolution anymore. He's steering outcomes inside the state itself. Certain factions benefit from Plev's removal, so the operation proceeds. The line between state and opposition starts dissolving. Eventually, Azef is exposed in 1908, and the damage to the revolutionary trust is catastrophic. Because if the leader of your assassination apparatus is working for the police, then who else is? Suspicion itself becomes the weapon. Then there's Roman Malinovsky, a Bolshevik leader, a major figure inside the Duma, trusted by Lenin's inner circle, also the Okhrana's highest paid informant. Code name, Portnoy, the tailor. Malinovsky doesn't just report strategy, he influences it, shapes internal decisions, identifies rising members for arrest. And Lenin keeps defending him even after accusations begin circulating, because the infiltration is almost impossible to believe. When the Bolsheviks seized power in 1917, They discover Malinovsky's file inside the Okhrana archives. They execute him. But by then, the lesson has already been absorbed. If the Tsar's police could penetrate the revolution this deeply, the revolution's police would need to become even more sophisticated. March 1917, the Romanov dynasty collapses. Crowds storm Fontanka 16 and seize the Okhrana archives. Dossiers, informant lists, surveillance records, Perlustration files. And this is one of the most important moments in the story. They don't burn the records, they study them. The provisional government examines Okhrana methods almost immediately. And when the Bolsheviks take power later that year, they don't dismantle the surveillance apparatus, they accelerate it. In December 1917, Lenin establishes the Cheka. Its early leadership studies Okhrana systems carefully and adopts much of the architecture directly. Perlustration becomes industrial-scale mail interception. Provocateurs become standard procedure. Foreign intelligence networks expand globally. Then the Cheka becomes the NKVD. The NKVD becomes the KGB. The KGB becomes the FSB. Same operating system, new administrators. Christopher Andrew, one of the leading Western historians of Soviet intelligence, argues that the Okhrana's greatest contribution to Soviet intelligence wasn't ideology at all. It was technique. The Soviets inherited the surveillance state. They didn't invent it. And that inheritance began a canal-side building in St. Petersburg after a son watched his father die in the snow. The Okhrana itself was actually small. Before 1914, it had only a few dozen employees across several offices and never maintained more than a few thousand informants at one time, but with surprisingly limited resources. It built the template almost every later surveillance system would study or adapt. The Stasi, the Secretariat, the KGB. The machine built with relatively little money became the operating system for entire empires. Same playbook, different century. The Okhrana intercepted letters. Modern states intercept emails, text messages, metadata, browser histories. The Okhrana planted provocateurs inside revolutionary groups. Modern intelligence services infiltrate activist circles, digital communities, and protest movements. The Okhrana developed controlled opposition through police-managed unions. Modern systems cultivate approved opposition parties, curated media ecosystems, and carefully managed political spaces. The Okhrana forged documents to redirect public anger. Modern states deploy disinformation campaigns, bot networks, and manufactured narratives for the same purpose. The tools evolve, the logic doesn't, because the surveillance state doesn't begin with technology. It begins with a decision that knowing what citizens think, say, and plan matters more than their right to do those things privately. The Okhrana made that decision in 1881. Then it built the machine to enforce it. And almost every surveillance system since has copied the blueprint, upgraded the hardware, and changed the letterhead. They just weren't watching the game. They were dealing the cards, making the deck, and owning the casino. And the house, it usually wins, unless you understand the rules. This has been Hidden Forces in History. I'm Jeremy Ryan Slate. Be sure to like this video, leave us a comment, and smash that subscribe button if you want more Hidden Forces in History.